We'll move to 2.0, adoption of the agenda. We do have an addendum. Please take note of that.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I second it.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt that agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 3.0, approval of minutes from prior board meetings.
Move to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve those minutes from February 16th, the 22nd, and March 8th meetings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 4.0, consideration of bills and warrants. Any questions or concerns?
I have one on page 5, I think it was. It was the high school electric bill. Let me just find it. Actually, it was page 15. Towards the bottom, $17,652 for high school electric bill. I didn't have time to call you today.
And so I'll have to check on that tomorrow and get back with you. Because right off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. So it appears that was the high school electric from January the 21st through February the 18th. But I'll have to.
Because the previous month it was $9,177, so I just wondered what happened there.
I'll have to check tomorrow and get back with you.
Thank you.
Further questions? Okay, we'll entertain a motion then.
Motion to approve the bills and warrants.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those bills and warrants. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 5.0, hearing of requests and suggestions of citizens and organizations. Is there anyone not already on the agenda that is here to address the board? Okay, seeing none, hearing none, we'll move to 6.0, special report. Mrs. Burke, the orchestra teacher, will discuss potential for an additional strings teacher.
Hello.
Do you want it over there? Or do you want me to control it?
Yeah, just.
Yeah, grab it and go.
Okay, well, should I sit? Should I stand?
Whatever's most comfortable for you.
Whatever you wish to do.
I'm here to talk about the fact that we need another orchestra teacher desperately. So as of right now, our numbers, string-wise, have just exploded. This has been coming for years. At Garfield, we have 49 string students, Guthridge 44, St. Patrick's 20, the middle school 34, and at the high school we have 28, and that's a total of 175 students that I've been in charge of this year. So the history of the program, Norma Jean Seaton started using modified Suzuki techniques in the schools back in 1966. If you don't know what the Suzuki method is, it's a method of string teaching where you learn about music at a really early age. That's the emphasis of it, is that you start at an early age, and it's been a really unique program in Parsons for a long time, where we've started kids young. We used to start them as young as kindergarten, pre-K.
We did pre-K.
Pre-K, okay. And I'll talk about why we don't do that anymore in a little bit. And there were 2 orchestra teachers up until the numbers had started to fall, and it turned into 1 job in 2010. The job was split in the following way. It was kindergarten through 4th grade specialized music instruction, and I'll talk a little bit about what that means, and then the 5 through 12 orchestra teacher. So specialized music instruction, if you think about like reading interventions, math interventions, that's pretty much what specialized music instruction is. They get pulled out of their classes It's supposed to be in small groups. Currently, my small groups are 7 to 14 kids, which is a full classroom. And sometimes I'm pulling out 7 kids out of one classroom at a time, which makes things difficult for the classroom teacher as well, because I'm pulling about half of their class. Studies have shown, and I can send anybody that wants the link to this study, that specialized music instruction doesn't hinder academic performance, but it actually increases it. So this is a really great program that we have going, and I would like to keep it going. The ways my schedule has changed to accommodate the growing numbers. Well, first, I have a biking time at the beginning of the day now, so instead of having 4 pullouts at the end of each day, I can only have 2 or 3, and that's been a big change. And kindergarten and first grade orchestra at Lincoln and St. Patrick's no longer exists because they just do not fit into my schedule. St. Patrick's and Garfield are only receiving group lessons once a week instead of twice a week, again, because I have so many kids at especially Garfield that I cannot pull that many kids out twice a week. And then just as an additional note, I've also added a Viking chamber orchestra at the high school. That's been for about 3 years. That's an advanced orchestra that we meet before school just because I like my job. That's just what we do. One of my biggest concerns about next year is looking at my middle school orchestras. Currently, I have a concert orchestra, which is more of the beginners, and then I have a chamber orchestra, who are the advanced players. And the skill difference in those classes is concerning. Think about teaching algebra and addition at the same time. That's basically what I'm trying to do with these groups. Looking at these upcoming numbers, I think that warrants 3 orchestras at the middle school. Especially I have 26 graders right now, and they barely fit into my classroom. It's pretty common to have a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade orchestra. That's how it is at Independence. That's how it is at Pittsburgh. That's how it is at Fort Scott. That's very common in the orchestra programs around this area. Other aspects of the job. I have 175 instruments to care for, inventory, and rent out, and that takes up a lot of time. We do 4 middle school and high school concerts, 2 elementary concerts. I did drop one this year because of late instrument arrival because we had so many signups. District and state orchestra, regional solo contest, state solo contest, state large group contest. The elementary orchestra kids currently don't have any performance opportunities outside of those 2 concert areas simply because I don't have time to do it. And hiring another elementary teacher would greatly enhance their performance opportunities. So my proposed scheduling for 2 teachers, I would be the 5 through 12 teacher, would be keeping the Viking time, having high school orchestra, having a middle school beginning orchestra, a middle school intermediate orchestra, an advanced orchestra, and then I would still do 2 classes of 5th grade specialized pullouts at Guthridge. I would propose adding K1 orchestra back because of the history of the program. It was really sad to see that cut. At Lincoln and St. Patrick's, that would be 7 40-minute specialized music instructions, lessons a day, which is pretty similar to what our special teachers do now. That's what the art teacher does, that's what the gym teacher does. 35 small group lessons a week. That's about 100 kids twice a week, and that would put kids back into groups of 5 or 6 students per group, which is still a pretty large group for specialized music instruction. That's all the information I have for you. Does anybody have any questions?
The teacher you would propose, do they need specialized music degree or?
They would need to have a music education degree. And I did talk with Ms. Ray about it, and she discussed that we would use PD funds to Suzuki train them, so that way we can get that Suzuki name back onto the program. Because personally, I'm not Suzuki trained.
And that Suzuki is that really early in those littles. They can look at them. So that would definitely be something. There weren't very many music graduates across the state. So I think the list they sent out, there were 12. Does that sound right? Something like that. I'm not sure how many would be orchestra, which is music in general. But The program has grown since Mrs. Burke has taken over, and so she wanted to share those numbers with you and let you know kind of where we're at.
The numbers are very good.
The program's good.
Thank you.
Does St. Pat share any of this cost?
No, we generate some funding from the services that we provide. So,
If we did move back to St. Pat's twice a week, we could get that 90 minutes per student.
because right now we have to have 90 minutes of instruction to receive for FTE, and we don't have 90 minutes of instruction because we've got too many kids. There's not enough flooring to go around.
To receive the money.
If we added a
Right.
second teacher, then we could go back to 90 minutes, and then that would be a funding.
There would be a funding.
Opportunity.
Funding, there would be some FTE. And it would depend on how many kids at St. Pat's enrolled.
Right.
And we're in the program, so.
Any further questions?
Okay, so as we're looking at planning for next year, we will keep this.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Lauren.
Thank you.
We will move on to 7.0, report of the superintendent of schools.
All right, our ESER 3 update. We have another work session tomorrow at noon to go over that, planning for the application. So I've been working on that, I'd say about halfway through. I've been meeting with groups. I met with both student councils at the middle school and high school, and then sent out a survey for students to fill out. Got two more staff groups at the middle school. Actually, they may be the last ones to go and visit with about ESER, and then there'll be the staff survey. We are meeting on Wednesday at 10 o'clock with DCS to review the projects list and those preliminary numbers to see how much those things are going to cost. So my plan is to have a rough draft available for you to look at, completed at the April board meeting. Okay? Any questions on that? Mike's having a fun time doing his too. Okay. All right. The 15th, we have Easter recess, so the district office will be closed that Friday for Good Friday. April the 18th, that Monday, that is an inclement weather makeup day, so we will have class that day, students and teachers. The 23rd of April is prom, and it will be out at in the park, which will be nice. Last year that worked very well. Something that didn't make this list, April the 25th, is our KISA accreditation visit. So our OVT, our outside visitation team, is here to look at all of our accreditation materials and give us some pointers and things like that. So this is year 4 for us. So next year is year 5, and that's the year we'll actually be accredited. So this year, they'll come and they'll give us a report. I hope to have that report back by the May board meeting to share. We'll see.
Do you have a list of the names that are on that committee?
On the OVT committee?
I can tell you. Alexis McMillan will be our OVT chair. She's the Student Services Coordinator at Coffeyville. Mrs. Weaver, I can't remember, Tracy Weaver is a title high school teacher at Independence, will be on the committee. And then Mike Martin, principal at Frontenac Middle School, will be the other OVT member.
So those will be the 3 this year. So, and then on the 29th of April, the school is not in session. That's a staff professional development day. That will be spent in the buildings, looking through data and getting ready, making plans for the upcoming year and PD. So, any questions for me?
Okay, thank you. 8.0, report on the March Tri-County Board meeting.
Hey, we heard the annual federal audit of Tri-County from the accounting firm of Yerkes and Michelle's. A social worker and instructional coach have been hired to serve Tri-County students. That had been a goal of theirs, and they've finally attained and hired them. Recruiting of paras continues to be a struggle. We had a discussion of, I was talking to Mike today, it's low everywhere, and paras are really, really important. So talked about maybe, each district maybe increasing wages, and I told him that we had been a leader in that already. We approved the Infotech subscription, which is a program used for professional development for special ed teachers and paras. And the last thing I have, the number of special ed students being served by Tri-County is up 88 students this year, which is a huge, huge gain.
questions for Mrs. Thompson? All right, thank you very much. Moving on to 9.0, the District Accountability Report. Mr. McGee.
Okay, over the last couple months, Mrs. Ray in the View, and then I've shared with you some district accountability report. To kind of make sense of some of this, on the back of that report, you'll see student achievement data from the state. This is from the state assessment from last year. I kind of broken it down to the number of students who are what they call college and career ready. It means they got a 3 or a 4 on the state assessment. And that's kind of our goal with our student achievement. I also shared with you kind of a breakdown of that accountability report in comparison to other school districts in SEK and with the state as a kind of a measuring stick on where we at with our student achievement of students. What I wanted to kind of share with you tonight is the work that goes into getting our students to achieve. To make sure that our students are college and career ready, and the work that we're doing in all of our buildings. So the state assessment's giving once a year. It actually starts tomorrow for some of our buildings. It's that time of year, and then we don't get those results for a little while. We also have a local assessment, so each in our district we assess locally 3 times a year at different buildings. That assessment looks a little different. But you'll hear a lot of talk about Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And Tier 1 students are at that proficient mark, college and career ready. Our Tier 2 students need a little bit of intervention time or accommodation to get there. They're a little behind. And our Tier 3 students are significantly behind and need more extensive help to get there. So I'm going to let each building kind of talk real briefly about what that data shows. Are students making progress? What has the pandemic done in terms of creating learning loss with kids being quarantined and students remote and virtual, and what we're doing to close those gaps and get our students where they need to go. So we'll have a report from each building, from instructional coach and administrator, kind of talking through where we're at in that process at each building.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
So the tests begin tomorrow, and how long before you get the first results back?
It varies.
A month,
Depends on the
2
state.
months?
It's at least May, at the very
So
earliest.
April, so almost 2 months, and then what happens to those results? I mean,
We start breaking those down. The accountability report didn't come out until, I believe, December. Is that right? January. So we may get some initial results. We can't compare those to the state. They're not in comparison or disaggregated until even December, January of the following year.
But when we get them, parents, we generate copies. Typically, it comes by the end of the 9 weeks when we send grade cards. So a lot of times we can put those state assessment letters in with the grade cards. So the parent has an explanation letter and then has a letter that shows how their student scored. And so, and our instructional coaches take that data and eat it right up and begin to divide and look at that data for a variety of.
you know, my only complaint is that's a pretty long gap.
It
When you
is.
test someone and then find the results, and then you start, you're months behind. That's not your fault.
You're exactly right, and that's why what they're going to talk about is our local assessment, which we assess 3 times throughout the year. We do progress monitoring, which really guides our preparation and really the help that we give our students.
Right. This is more the formative stuff, that like the oil checks.
So we'll start with Ms. Gardner and Ms. Spencer.
She
You want that?
She wants to.
I'll just get in the computer. I do want to give a huge shout out to the literacy coaches. They collect the data, they look through it, they come and share them with us, we talk about it, we meet a lot and, talk about what we can do to improve it. But they are, greatly appreciated. They are doing a great job, an awesome job.
Okay, so I just kind of want to go over the data at Lincoln, some of the assessments that we do. So top right, the first grade map, this is the very first year that we have done this with first grade. So in the fall, you can see that first graders, we had 58% that met grade level in math, and then in reading we had 53%. And then when we took the test in January, the math went to 54% and reading to 53%. It's a new test for them. So I think a lot of it is we're having to teach them. Because, it's on the iPad. They're used to getting games and other things on the iPad.
When they get
so-
impatient, they just start hitting
Yes.
things until it goes to the next screen, because that's what they do with an app, you know, they just. wait
Yeah,
on.
so we're looking at maybe doing some rewards, talking to the students individually about goals, and then also doing some, we're going to have some training with the teachers, looking at the reports and seeing, pulling information, and what can the teachers use with all that information. So it's new, we're in progress, so. Kindergarten math, so what we use for that is our Go Math curriculum. We use the beginning, middle, and end of year. In September, the very first test, kindergartners scored, we had 64% at grade level, and then in January, we had 76%. Now, each teacher creates a goal, and then they also create a grade level goal. So in January, the kindergarten grade level goal was 75%, so they did meet their goal. And then in May, the end of year goal for kindergarten is, I believe, 90%. So that's what we're pushing towards. Okay, this is kind of a busy screen, but if you look at the top left, this is our Dibbles report. So if you look at that red line right down the middle, that's our separation between the beginning and the middle of year testing. So in August, that was our very first test for kindergartners. And we were testing to see what letters and sounds do they know. So we had 44% of our kindergartners ready. And then roughly every 2 weeks, we progress monitor them. And you can see we have gone up. So in December, that was our last beginning of year, and we had 98% of our kindergartners where they needed to be. And then in January, you'll see that drop. That's the first of the middle of the year assessment, and we have added new skills. And we look at, can the students segment words, or can they sound out nonsense words? So we had 51% of kindergartners ready. We are progress monitoring this week, so we will add those scores. Our latest one was 74% of our kindergartners. So, and again, our kindergarten grade level goal is, I believe, 90% is what we're reaching for. And then our first graders, they are tested in August on letter naming, segmentation of words, and nonsense words. And we had 51% of first graders at level, and then by December, we had 93% of our first graders. And then in January, we start ORF. So now we're listening to the students read, and we have 51% at level, and as of our last progress monitoring, we had 73%. And then preschool. So we started preschool, I think 2 years ago. And we used to do interventions with preschool. We started again this year, but unfortunately, with the need of kinder and first grade interventions, we've had to drop that again. And you know, with preschool, it's very fluid, so we have a lot of new kids coming in, students are leaving, so the scores are going to look a little different. And I will say that our 3-year-old program, I don't have their data on here, but we had 75% of our 3-year-olds at where they needed to be, so I thought that was pretty good. Okay, I think that's it.
When you would talk about the tier 2 and tier 3 and what percentages and what you do with those
Yeah,
students?
so up here we have the kindergarten tier 2 and tier 3. So tier 2 students, they get pulled 25 minutes a day, and our group size is no more than four students, I think. More than 4 students. And they work with interventionists. It is skill-based. And then our tier 3, they get pulled out at an additional amount of time. It does vary just with our schedule. It could be, you know, we're using all of our resources. We're pulling kindergarten aides. If they have any extra time, we're like, go work with this student. We're doing whatever we can and pulling resources in that way. So tier 3 students, they get an additional 15 to 20 minutes where we can. And as far as math, I don't know if I mentioned the math interventions. We really do not have a math intervention right now. just with scheduling and coverages, I would love to have a math intervention, but it's just.
We're still working to try to find out
somehow.
Yeah.
To get it, so.
Yeah, and we are down one title interventionist right now, so we are still looking to hire someone, so.
So are there math interventionists?
No, so our interventionists, they teach reading and math, but right now our focus is on reading, so we really do not pull for math.
because of the number of students that have a need for
the
reading
reading.
interventions.
Yeah.
There aren't enough adults to provide
I
all
know.
those reading interventions in addition to the math.
They are using the
interventions.
iPads for math, small group,
Oh,
kind of rotations
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
classroom.
Yeah, so in the classrooms, you'll see a lot of differentiated instruction.
Yeah, like the teacher will have a group and there'll be another on iPads and
Yeah.
another doing the skill, and so you'll see a lot of rotations in that.
Yeah, there's just not that extra 20 minutes a
Oh,
day
wow.
of it, so.
There's only so much time in the day.
Right.
There's so many people, I mean.
Thank you, ladies. We'll
Right,
move on
thank
to
you.
Garfield.
Good evening. So we knew coming into this school year that we would have to focus on remediation and high-impact teaching strategies. Second and third grade are critical years to identify why a student is not learning at the same rate as their peers. Each child comes to us like it's a one-of-a-kind puzzle for us to figure out what do they need. Sometimes it's a simple solution, and sometimes it's very complex. Do they need mental health support? Besides all the academic things, do they need mental health support? Do they need a responsive approach to their trauma? Or maybe they have a yet-to-be-identified disability. COVID's impact has left some of our students 2 years behind their grade level peers, and sometimes even more than 2 years behind. So we have the added challenge of figuring out, when it comes to figuring out if they have a disability, is it just because they have not had exposure to classroom instruction because of excessive COVID absences, to add to everything? So, Robin?
Next slide. Go get to the next one.
Hi, everybody. All right, the first local assessment data we're going to look at is Dibbles, and that's our reading test that we have 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, and then we progress monitor throughout the year. So in the beige column, you can see our second grade data, and at the beginning of the year, 40% of our students were at what was considered benchmark, and at winter testing, it was 48%, so we increased there. Third grade's in the blue column, and you can see that 50% were benchmarked, and in the winter time, it was 55%. And so for our building, the average is there in the gray. We do have some intensive students and some strategic students that we address with our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, and those are times when we pull students out of the classroom. Classroom teachers also offer additional support with additional resources that they have in their classrooms or things that we've given them through Title I. The accuracy scores, there speak for themselves. You can see that it's increased in some places and some places not, but building-wide, we're still looking pretty good at about 47% in the fall and around 50% in the winter. That means they're reading accurately and have a better comprehension of what they're reading. The next slide has to do with our MAP tests, and that's what Whitney was talking about before. But they're just starting in first grade, so we have some data coming into second grade. You can see that at the beginning of the year in second grade, about 50% of our kids were at grade level or above. And then in the winter, when we tested again, it was just 44%. In third grade, it was 50% and then 59% in the winter. And then that was in math, and then our building averages are around 50%. That's kids at grade level. In reading, The scores look pretty good as well, and we're around 60% in the fall for reading and around 54% in the winter for reading in our building. So that means that was kids at grade level. So we were happy with some of those increases.
I have a quick question. So when do we hear this term as a board at grade level? Who determines that hurdle at grade level?
So in the past, we were using the 50th percentile, and since COVID, NWEA, which is the MAP program, has decided that that's lowered a bit to the 41st percentile.
Okay, so a 41st percentile means that they would be
At grade level.
at grade level. Okay.
Or above.
All right. Okay.
So on our last slide, this is Garfield's response to our students' needs. We've had increased time of explicit phonics instruction in classrooms to address the gaps in early reading skills, and this is at all tiers of instruction. Number 2, during our PLC time, our collaboration, and our professional development days, we have used research-based instructional strategies to train our teachers and shared additional resources to better teach foundational skills at each grade level. So coming into the year, we were doing that already. But then mid-year, we analyzed our data to address each individual student's needs for instructional changes. And then we offered after-school learning opportunities for math and reading. And then mid-year, we looked back over our staff roster and where is every single staff member at every single moment, like all of our teachers' aides, and how can we pull them from one place and better have them be served in another place. And so not only did we do remediation, but we did enrichment at that time too, because it's important to us that children at every single level keep growing higher. And then we used online instructional curriculums such as Study Island, IXL, Reading Counts, to additionally address the learning gaps by using our one-on-one technology. That's all we have.
Hold on. So after-school math and reading opportunities, what does that mean? Who's that for? How long is it? How do the kids get in there? Who chooses them?
Okay, we started that back in November, and we ran it for about 6 weeks. Then, due to COVID challenges of staff not being able, staff absences due to COVID, substitutes to the staff having COVID and things like that, and then students that parents started calling me saying, their child was supposed to get on the bus, didn't get on the bus, or supposed to be at such and such bus stop, wasn't on the bus stop. Anyway, it started becoming a safety challenge because of because of the absences. And sometimes a person would test positive midday, and we had to switch up. Who's going to cover this person's after school thing? And so I quickly had to kind of assess the situation, and safety always trumps everything else. And I did not want a child getting, lost in the shuffle after school. And so I consulted with Lori and Robin, and it's like we quickly said we need to take a time off from this and kind of reassess what we can do differently and then regroup. So,
right. And
so at this point, there are no after.
Right now at Garfield,
Just
there's not after
That
school.
was my question.
Yeah.
Lincoln and Guthridge are also doing some after-school groups too.
And the goal will be, the goal had been after spring break to look again
Yes.
and to see what our absences were and begin to offer those. They're also beginning to plan all the summer programming and those opportunities.
Okay, so who are the kids that you're trying to reach, and how do they get in is my point, once you get this started? You should have that, right?
Yeah, so we use the data, and we're looking for kids that are below grade level that need extra instruction. Then they're invited to come, and those that can come will stay in their classroom with their teacher or whoever is teaching that after-school program in their classroom.
And we have provided transportation as well.
Yes.
So if that's an issue, we provide the bus.
So out of those that you ask, what percentage do you probably get? 20, 30?
Maybe 50 to 60%.
That high?
And we have a meeting this Friday with the other elementary schools and with the middle school to discuss summer school opportunities.
All right, so what's the transportation? I missed that.
So transportation is available for those after-school students if parents need a bus stop, a student, a ride to the bus stop, we can do that for them.
But it does require a lot of communication.
It does. It does.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'm Michelle Piva, and of course, this is Mr. Freeze, and we're representing Guthridge this evening. And we have very similar slides to what Guthridge had, or to what Garfield had. And so we're just sharing our data this evening. I'm feeling pretty good about, these are what we get from our Dibbles or Acadians reports, and so this is all around reading. And so that top part is our kids that were benchmarked. Fourth grade coming in, 44% were benchmarked. And according to our winter scores, we have 48% that are benchmarked now. And what you want to do is move them out of that tier 3. And so to have less percentage at tier 3 is a good thing, and less percentage at tier 2 is, we're moving them up into that benchmark category. And then fifth grade, same way for this is just our oral reading fluency scores in that top category. 27% came in benchmarked at fifth grade, just pretty low, but came, in winter we have 36% benchmark. And then you can see kind of our building-wide oral reading fluency scores where we're moving them out of the tier 3. Those are our, most needy students. They have significant reading gaps, and moving them up towards that being benchmarked. And then that bottom section is, again, the accuracy score. And it's very critical when we learn about the science of reading. The accuracy is all of those phonics skills that we talk about and those small group skills. So you always want to try to see more benchmark kids with the accuracy and less of that tier 3, so you know whether you're teaching them at the explicit level that you're needing to. And if we go on to this next one, these are our MAP scores. And I know, Mr. Martino, you said something about our state assessment scores don't always come in a timely manner, but our MAP scores do come in within a week or two of us taking them. So that's kind of nice, so we can analyze that data very carefully. And so we have a little bit of a fall here in the winter. From fall to winter, we have some decreases. I don't know that we can explain those other than we do that in December. Perhaps it's, that Christmas time slump or something, but we're hoping that we see some higher scores. So again, it's the 41st percentile here that we're looking at as well for being at grade level. And building wide, you can look in that gray section where we have for math, 33% came in at grade level in the fall. Now we're at 27%. The second row is reading, so 40% came in the fall. 36% at winter, and then language usage, that would be kind of your grammar and sentence writing, that kind of thing. 36%, and we're kind of maintaining there for 33%. And then we were just trying to show some things that we've done in response to the deficits, and especially we were focusing on math, but we've had some things that we've addressed here, in addition to everything that we do already. We did try an after-school program from January through, really the week before we had our spring conferences. And we dedicated that specifically to math deficits. And then our professional learning time, we've tried to capitalize on that time, using that for math discussions and having the fourth grade teachers get together as a group, including the resource teacher, fifth grade get together as a group and have some really quality discussions. I know out of that, like the fourth grade has developed common math vocabulary, and we've developed posters and some graphic organizers that they're using across fourth grade. And then we also this year are trying to really utilize our study island programs and offer incentives and devote time to that. Because sometimes you have all of those resources, but you don't have the time specifically devoted to that. So our title aids are involved with that as well. And then, of course, we have recently started some small group interventions with some of our Go Math materials. They're assessment prep materials called PARCC resources, PARCC. I have no idea what that stands for. And then for our ELA, the literacy coaches have been fortunate to go to, or our instructional coaches have been going to a literacy learner cadre at Greenbush this year. And it's about once a month, and we go and learn all kinds of new things about the science of reading. So I feel like that's something I've been able to bring back, and I know Whitney and Robin and Kendra, all of us have learned a lot there. And then we're in the process of training our title aids with some 95% curriculum materials. And then, we just continue to meet with our staff as we need to align those lessons to what their specific needs are. And then we also brought reading counts back to Guthridge this year. I'm sure Joanne remembers those days. So that had been kind of just lingering there at Lincoln and Garfield, and we wanted to really bring that back strong. So it's there.
And Ms. Piva and her team really do a lot of things in terms of collecting the data and then making a response. What are we going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And then that kids, if they're engaged, if they feel they're having some success. So with our reading counts, we track that every week. They total it up. We do it in the announcements. Same thing with our study island. We've got 2 periods in the day, 2 periods weekly where our teachers get to meet, grade level. And we've just, in the past, that was always a tough time to get kids covered. We decided that we would address study island, so they made monthly
goals that we've set for the kids, and then when they meet those goals, we provide incentives, and it's really been I think a great thing for our building to see that these students really can pass these topics. They're very difficult, and they've had success with it.
And they put their pictures on the wall, and what she just said is the thing I think is most important is sometimes if kids think they can, they can. And I know if they don't think they can, they won't. So all the little successes that we try to reward them to get those, and we're hoping to see some really positive growth. We've really focused on math in response to the data. I think our ELA has been really something we're really proud about, but we've struggled in that 5th grade math area for a few years, and then we missed a year with COVID, didn't get a chance to take the assessment, but we always wonder if when they adjusted the curriculum, if they called it a math slump. But you get into 5th grade math, it gets pretty challenging, and finding, so like right now, in response to that and preparing for the test that's coming up, you're not teaching the test, but that's the moment. So we've taken that benchmark group of kids in reading where their peers are going to intervention time, and we've added another 30 minutes of math, hopefully to hang on to those kids. If they're not going to interventions, that means they're a 3 or a 4 in reading. That probably correlates into being ahead of the game in math. So if you can hang on to any of those upper kids. So they're losing reading interventions a little bit, starting, a few weeks ago, just to try to think if you score 301 on an assessment, that's a 3. If you scored 299, it's a 2. So you asked who we picked. We're looking at the middle school. We dubbed them bubble kids a long time ago. Where can we get some massage the data and get the growth? So that's what they spent so much time working on that, and then sharing that information, and then trying to get those groups where we can just track them. And sometimes those groups are pretty fluid. Kids doing well, they move out. And then the after school math was so challenging because you've broken routines for kids to stay after school. And it's, I know Misty had mentioned, it's scary. Our kids are 4th, 5th grade, we can trust them to go, but some days they forget and they go home with someone else, and then you're spending hours chasing. But we targeted 28 students.
We were able to, and they were pretty consistent about coming and staying after school, and
I think only 2 turned it down. And we did the same thing last year, and I think, it's funny when you have discipline issues, parents don't answer the phone very often, but I was sitting here last year and told you, I think I have 24, 25. When you
make a phone call and you make it personalized.
And they want
they'll
to, and
come.
you're offering some things, our parents all chose to be part of these enrichment or extension activities, so.
Any questions
I
for
have a
us?
question. So are all of these assessments on the computer digitally?
Not the social studies, but.
Yes, well, we'll take a social studies, a state
The ones that
assessment,
you- okay.
and that's a performance
So,
piece.
one of the principals said there were issues with taking computerized testing.
I think for the younger kids.
At Lincoln.
Yeah, the
Just
younger
because
kids.
they're not used to iPads.
They're not quite used to, our kids don't really, by the time we've got them.
And our students all have Chromebooks now, and they seem to be very comfortable using a Chromebook.
Well, and MAP is a pretty lengthy test too for first
So,
grade.
so we have MAP testing, and I don't know what MAP testing, all these
Measures
acronyms.
of academic progress, I got that one.
All right. We got
Measures of
Dibbles,
academic performance.
Dibbles.
Is it performance or progress?
That's my point. We're talking to the general public. I don't know what MAP testing is. I've been on the board for 10 years. I don't know what Dibbles is.
Right.
You've got state, it seems like all we're doing is testing. And that's not your fault. I'm just saying, that's coming from the State Department, and that bothers me. When you could have some formative assessments, to me, as a teacher, that's what I want. I want to know where the kid is now, and what do I need to do to help? That's all I
Right,
need
and
to know.
I think when we talk about the Dibbles assessments, that's like an oral reading fluency and accuracy assessment. That is that formative assessment. It's a very small amount of
It's a really
time.
short amount of time.
Very short
And
amount
that's
of time.
dynamic.
But added into the 15 other tests that we give.
Right.
Well, we've been discussing that, and you want to measure your growth. If you look at MAP, you want to say from where you got them and where they went. And we do that. We've been doing that at Guthridge, fall, winter, spring. And depending on the when your technology's available, when you've got your kids uploaded, sometimes that fall test doesn't happen until late September. So what we've decided that we're just going to measure spring to spring. And we're going to throw away the fall MAP scores. That's basically 3 chunks of days our teachers get back into the instruction team or instruction time, and then we'll take that winter one. It kind of aligns well with what's happening at the end of the semester, and it'll give us a chance to see where they're at, because sometimes that spring's up here, and if you look, when you send them home with parents, you'll see, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, you'll see all these scores, and you look at, and it gives you a percentile, and you just start looking and you think, that fall one gives you a false sense of maybe if you're a golfer out there, maybe you sandbagged a little bit in the fall, but spring to spring is how we're
That
going to
makes more sense. The other thing is, I'm a math guy. My wife's an English teacher, so I'm not going to badmouth any English reading testing, but math takes a hit. That's the sad part.
Well, we've talked about math. I think later on, Mr. Swanson had mentioned, the math assessment of high school doesn't paint an accurate picture of the kid's ability to calculate. It's comprehending the long reading. So it's really, we're in comparison to our peers. So it's important to know where we're at and where we handed them off at. So that's.
And I think that the local assessments that we do, our teachers in our buildings do a great job of using that data to drive instruction and give the supports that our kids need and make sure that that's done. And I think they do a great job of that.
Well, I agree. I just say there's just so much.
There's so much.
That's all I'm saying.
You're right.
You're also going to hear middle school and high school do the fast bridge test, which we have learned takes a lot less time than the MAP.
MAP is.
Yeah, it's pretty long.
And we are looking into maybe moving towards fast bridge, the earlier elementary. We're just in the process of discussing that. So.
Because you do see kids get frustrated taking that, because even if they get it right, then they go up, and if they get it wrong, and it's time to get sometimes, it is tough sometimes.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Hello. I'm Kendra Vargas. And Mr. Gordon, I said I wasn't going to introduce you, but I felt weird not since I said my name. And we're just going to report on, as they just said, we have switched to fast bridge testing. And with the Dyslexia Initiative that came down, we do have to screen our kids 3 times a year. And this kind of
considered a screener.
Yeah, and so this kind of fits that bill also, so it kind of saves hopefully a little bit of testing. The amount of time to test students at the middle school level is definitely less. But the information that we're going to share, we've put it in tiered information. And if you see kids that are in Tier 1, this means they're on track, as you've heard. Tier 2 means they need some support. Tier 3, they need intensive support. We're also going to report benchmark scores for the fall and the winter, and then we'll have the spring ones later. And then student growth, which we really feel is important to look at, where they came to us at and where they're headed at. So if you look at the chart, if you look up at the top, these are the tiers showing, like on the left is reading and on the right is math. And our Tier 1 students, they came to us and this is building wide, 34% of them benchmarked. And then in the winter, you can see they're at 32%. Tier 2, these are our students who need support. And Mr. Gordon will kind of share some things that we're doing to give them that extra support. And that's a large amount of kids that come in, 26 in the fall, and then they were at 31% in the winter. Tier 3, this is intensive support. So at the middle school, you're talking, they need some phonics instruction. We are struggling decoding words. So you mentioned math a while ago. They can't even begin to decode the math problem, to know the multiple steps they need to do when it comes to math.
Number sense and math facts are something that we're seeing a large struggle in right now.
And the math's on the right side there, and you can see, when you see that Tier 3, FastBridge does an excellent job of telling us exactly what interventions are needed. It's always fact fluency. That's where they're struggling in that Tier 3. And like I said, we're at the middle school level, so that's why it comes in at the Tier 3.
And they've been working on that
Yeah.
autism.
Oh, yeah.
From the time they were little. I mean, that's something.
Oh, we totally know that they're working on it, but that's where it's flagging, and that's why it lumps them in that Tier 3. Yeah, it's not that we don't think.
That's not.
Yeah, we don't think that at all.
And it's just something that every single year, it seems to come up in every grade.
For centuries.
Yes, I know. And then if you look down at the 2 charts below those, I want you to focus first at the very right of each chart. You have reading on the left, you have math on the right. This is the percentage of students who show their typical growth and above. These are the students that met their growth goal from fall to winter. And building wide, our reading students, 65% of our building met their growth goal. Now, if you look at the benchmark, 39% came in at benchmark at grade level. But what that tells me and what that tells our teachers is our kids are learning. They are learning, they are meeting the goals that are set for them. We're just trying our hardest to narrow that gap. No one's fault, COVID, whatever, but they are learning. So that's always kind of something to look at as we're looking at those scores. And then on the right, you have math, and you can see as a building, 55% of our students met the goal that was set for them from fall to winter. And that changes with the semesters.
And we'll measure again in spring.
So I have a quick question. If I'm a student in the fall, and I met my goal, but I didn't benchmark in the winter, how can my goal be less than benchmarking in the winter? That tells me that the change for me to go from benchmarking in fall and winter is larger than my goal.
It has to increase, and that's according to national norms.
Because you're comparing to other, maybe the rest of the state or national.
These are our kids that are learning
pace.
on track, yeah.
But they're not learning on track to benchmark. So-
They came in below, if you, like on the right, maybe it shouldn't be in the same table. I mean, but on the right is the kids who met their growth goal. They may have been a benchmark, they may not have been, they may have been above.
I got you. Okay.
Okay.
Now it explains it.
Like I said, maybe it shouldn't have been in that same table.
I
there,
got you.
but-
All right.
Okay. And then they did, Fastbridge is at 41% too, when it's doing its national percentiles, and it's basing it with all the students in the United States, so.
When did we get Fastbridge?
This is our first year.
And it's been useful. We like the switch so far, especially the shorter, we can do it in a class period. We can get them all done in a week. And so.
It used to take 3, like when I was teaching ELA, it took us 3 class periods to do 1 test. And if you're a 6th grader for a moment or whatever grade, you did 3 days in ELA, 3 days in math, 2 to 3 days in language, and then you had science. And that was at fall, and we used to not do winter because of that. And now this is a 30 to 45-minute test.
And this is more reflective of like progress monitoring, because the standards are lined up with the state assessment. And this is our local assessment that we
And it
use to measure.
helps
and
individualize the
anticipate.
supports that you need, as you said.
Correct.
It kind of tells them where they're deficient and what needs to be done.
It gives us the intervention we need for Tier 2 and Tier 3.
So then that's a segue into what do we do about it? So here's our information. One of the things we do, our spring goals, we want to see ELA go up to 70% of our kids show that growth, that appropriate growth. And then math, thank you. And then math, we want to bump them up to 60% also. We feel like those are real smart goals, attainable and measurable inside of those 2 subjects. Stay there one more time. The ideal, so what you guys are seeing up there on those, with reading on your left and math on your right, ideally, those numbers should be more reflective of a pyramid. 60 or 70% at the bottom, 20 or 30 in the middle, and 10 or so Tier 3 interventions. And so whenever you look at ours is not a pyramid. Ours is more like a brick, or straight up and down. The amount of fluctuation between those 3 categories, or between, I have it written down, between 24 or 25% and 34%. And so there's not a whole lot of fluctuation there. It's not an ideal pyramid. So this is what we're doing about it. Tier 1, the piece that I have to kind of focus on with you guys is this is what we're doing, and this is what we're planning on doing next year also inside of our tiered interventions. So Tier 1 kids have access to ZAP. That zeros aren't permitted if you have a missing assignment, or if you're not performing a standard, you need to redo an assignment or go in and get additional help. We have that on Mondays and Wednesdays. We've reached out to the Honor Society at the high school, and they've sent us students that can do the math also. So we're able to supervise them, and then we have an older peer coming in that's used to doing, algebra and calculus at the high school. They come in and work with the middle school math, and that was a cool idea this year that they did during ZAP. All of these.
What time is ZAP?
Right after school, 3:30 to 4:35 is usually when they kind of teeter out of there. And ZAP takes priority over athletic practices also. So if you have a student that comes in eligible, it's a great resource to use for our coaches. And so all of these plans, all of this list here, 1, 2, and 3, none of that has any integrity unless you have the rubber hits the road and you actually get time with your staff and with your departments to actually analyze those test scores and interventions, and identifying the students individually that need those. Because roughly 60% of our kids need a Tier 2 or Tier 3 intervention according to our Fastbridge scores. And so that is where, whenever we built our schedule at the beginning of the year, and even at semester, we put all of our common core classes together, their departments. And so once a week on their plan time, they go meet with Kendra and or Susan or myself, and they go through the test data and make plans for the future. And that's where our Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions actually live. And that's where the integrity behind it comes from, because they sit down and plan and identify those strategies. So one of our big goals next year is to start working on differentiation, because if I'm a math teacher and I'm looking at my middle school scores, I realize 60% of my kids need Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports, and that's what my day is going to look like. I've only got about 30 to 35% that I can give them a direct lesson plan the first time I do it, and they're going to get something out of it. And so differentiation, scaffolding underneath the kids. So I'll bump over that's tier one. Every one of our staff members will have that. And we want to focus on that as a part of our professional development next year. So we've already reached out to Greenbush to provide appropriate trainings on some of those things. Tier two interventions, anything on tier two and tier three that you guys see, those resources that are highlighted in blue, those are also enrichment. So those are specifically tailored to the student. If they get the question right, it goes up a grade level. If they get the question wrong, it goes down a grade level. And so inside of our regular ed classes in ELA, we have Study Sync that scaffolds to those students. So that can be an enrichment also. The Fast Bridge identifies those students. It gets tracked inside a panorama so that our teachers have access to what tier they're on and what appropriate accommodations they need. Tier three is more intensive. And well, so let me go back really quick. Support class, this is important to say. That tier two, the most kind of influential piece that we have inside of the building is our support classes. So if you're a student and you're a tier two student in math, you can get up to 100 minutes of math inside of your 7-period day because you'll go there for 2 50-minute periods. And so you'll get 100 minutes worth, 50 on level and then 50 remedial, where they're using those tier two strategies and those diagnostic tools to meet you at your level. So the 100 minutes is something that we can measure. One thing that our 6th grade ELA and ELA SPED department, they've been trained with Sonde system, and that's phonics. And so continuing some of that elementary, because K6 used to be elementary at the middle school, we have 6th grade, so we do work phonics in some of our classrooms also. One thing that we're planning for next school year, this is kind of on you guys to decide later, it's been pitched with Lori at our admin meetings, is an ELA interventionist. And that's something that the elementary schools use that we would like to bring to the middle school. And so that person would work with our tier 2 and tier 3 kids. Tier 3 students, you could add another 15 and 20 minutes to their day where they're getting pulled from another class, maybe an elective class or a non-core or another core class, and you pull them in, and then that's one-on-one. And whenever you say it's intensive, it's very specific to their learning gap. And start closing that gap between students that perform a 1 on the state assessment, bumping them to 2s, and then 2s to the 3s, so that we start seeing more of a pyramid instead of the block that we have right now, and shifting those kids more into those tier 1 sets where they're at grade level or above. Tier 3 interventions, a lot of times it comes with a special education referral. We actually take a look at the student's IQ and see if there's any gaps there that we need to address specifically through a SPED referral. Tier 3, they also have access to support classes. And then also, again, if we had an ELA interventionist inside of the building, we could address them another 15 or more minutes a week with those high intensive kids. But like I said, inside of our building right now, it's not like we don't have a need for that. We've got 20 to 25% of our kids that are tier 3 that are underperforming. They're scoring a 1 or a 1 on the state assessment. Is that it? Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mr. Swanson, the principal of the high school, and Jane Good is our instructional coach at the high school. And we're going to kind of do it backwards, I guess, from what the middle school did. Talk a little bit about the tiers and what we're doing with those, especially in English language arts. If you remember, we sat here about a year ago and talked about the Dyslexia Initiative and how we were going to do that at the high school. There was discussion about, do we take a kid out of an elective class to give them more intensive language arts? And we all agreed, no, that's not a good idea to do that to a kid. So what we did was we tiered our English classes. So tier 3 is our special ed group, and they are in what we call our IE classes. Our tier 2 kids, they are with Miss Elliott, and it's not your traditional English 9, English 10, English 11. There's a mixture of kids in those classes, and they're working on the things that they need to work on. And our tier 1 kids, of course, are in our general English classes. So we have done it a little bit different. That's our plan again for next year. In talking with Mrs. Elliott, it was rather intensive for her, but we have found a couple of things to supplement, things that she's worked with before, she's seen, and she is, as she came to me about a month and a half ago and she goes, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And now she is totally flipped. She is so excited about some of the things that we found that she's going to use. Now, math, on the other hand, at the high school, it's ability grouped. I mean, you go into usually maybe a general math class and then a pre-algebra and then an algebra. So math is kind of tiered already based on where you fall. However, this year, Ms. Steinert has worked with Alex program. I can let Ms. Good talk more about Alex if you want to know more about that, because I don't know a lot about it. But Nancy's been using that in her classroom, and the more she uses it, the more she likes it. And the more she plans to implement it into her general math and her basic math classes and her Algebra 1 classes to do some of those interventions within the classroom with them. So although we don't have to do anything with math this year, we will next year. But we've already started kind of dipping our toes in the waters of what those interventions might look like and what we might want to use. So I'm going to turn it over to Jane and let her talk. So when you see those tiers, they're just a little different than the middle school from what you heard, but basically they're similar. So.
Okay, I did want to start with ACT because I've had questions before here at the high school, or here in the board, about what's going on with the ATC suite. And so you can see we have a variety. Kansas, the state of Kansas, is really pushing this, and they're paying for it. So that's a good thing. The only one that has been responsible for the district is the fall ACT with the seniors, because it pays for everybody else. And this year, Lori did agree to pay for that for our seniors. So once again, there's no reason why kids having the ability to take it and afford it, it's not been an issue for them. So that's a really good thing. Numbers are always a concern. The numbers were a little low with the pre-ACT, and you can see it's a good practice test for them. Fall work keys, once again, we had a good turnout, not as good as we would like, but we had a good range of scores. Fall ACT was for the seniors, and you can see the composite. Spring ACT, this is last year's, we had 38 students, and you can see our composite compared to the state. And this year, we had 54 students. And of course, we don't have their scores back yet, but the numbers did increase. And our goals with ACT Suite is just simply increase participation, increase practice, at the junior and senior levels where they get more practice with ACT strategies, and increase the rigor. And we feel like this is, once again, another opportunity for our kids to have it paid for in school, and it helps them build a foundation for their future. Any questions about the ACT Suite?
Are they digital now too?
No, we have chosen to do all paper pencil at this point in time.
Okay, but they are digital.
They are, and some of the feedback that I heard from the AC, that they're really going to start pushing.
I know.
But we have opted to do paper pencil at this point in time, but that probably won't last forever. So. Okay, so once again, we're FastBridge up at the high school. This is new to us this year, and we've grouped our tiers. And when you look at this data, what you want to focus on is Tier 1, and Tier 2 and 3, did the numbers shrink? Because you want Tier 1 to grow, you want Tiers 2 and 3 to shrink. And they did for overall for our kids 9 through 12. So, considering it was a new test, and I will tell you, this is the A reading scores, and we were recommended by FastBridge to use this component. The test is 2 parts, but they really want us to focus on our numbers with A reading versus the auto reading, which is a little bit more focused on decoding. But it was new for the kids. The test is much shorter, but it had new elements that they were not used to. So considering this is our baseline data, we showed growth from the beginning, and I believe that we will continue to show growth in that, where the kids just understand the test better.
So is it just like a reading comprehension test? Is it reading speed? Or?
It's basically comprehension, but it's also asking about word meaning. It focuses on the whole, gamut of comprehension. The auto reading focuses more on word identification. You can have synonyms, you can have morphology. It's just a different piece that we've never had before. And it's timed. The auto reading and the auto math are timed. And so that can be a little intimidating,
but the kids picked up pretty well. I was pretty pleased as I observed and watched, them handling the different sections of the test.
What leads to a student not being tested per your asterisk there? A student not being tested per your asterisk?
There were some kids that just simply did not get tested. We've got kids that are enrolled, that are in our system, that are at Independence.
Okay.
There are kids that were absent, could never get them tested within the window time. So it's a small number. We try very hard to try to get them all tested, but there are some. Some of the students, especially when we have like the fall window, we have the winter window, what if they come in between? They miss, and so their scores maybe don't go into the fall, they would go into the next window. Because we try to test them as they enroll so that we have a good idea of where they're at. Okay, now this is kind of busy. I apologize for that, but it is a lot of data. This is the breakdown of fast bridge reading. This includes SPED. And I will tell you, I checked my numbers on the 9th and 10th grade because they were the same. That's kind of the instant clue with a data person. If you got the same numbers, something must be wrong. But I went back and double checked multiple times, and they were the same numbers. And once again, you can see from the fall to the winter, we had increase at the junior level. It stayed the same at 9th and 10th. And then we have the 12th grade. Over on the last column where I have SC, that's just our support class. The growth of the students in support class was 54% versus as a whole 69, and that's what that score means. My asterisks on 12th grade are up for discussion. You notice from 11th grade you have like 42% and it drops to 29, 49 to 32. Typically what happens is our 12th grade students, we have a large portion that they're taking college classes, so we don't include them. So those are things that we have to decide as a faculty. Do we want our scores to look better and test those kids that, we really aren't going to be doing anything with them, but it would make our numbers look better. And it was discussed with the English 12 teachers that they would really like to focus on just testing in the fall and the winter, because their focus in the spring is getting these kids graduated. And I will tell you, the state has given us a little bit of leeway for 12th grade to determine what we're going to do. They're not requiring us to test our kids that are in college. We would have that flexibility to focus more in the fall and the winter testing versus the spring. So we haven't put it in concrete. What we did this year was eliminate those things, but we'll always look at it to see what we need to do. Basically down below, I have a goal. I was sharing with Eric that if this goal right here, our SMART goal of increasing the skills by 5%, it is really targeting tier 2, because just as Mr. Freeze said, it's those bubble kids. It is so frustrating for a student to, and I'm going to shift here to like state assessments. They score a 299 and they're at a level 1-2. One more point, they would have gone to a level 3. And we need to really be zoning in on those kids. Not that we're forgetting everybody else, but we can see movement faster with that group. So this goal was specifically written for tier 2. We'll have other goals that we'll have to address school-wide and for tier 3 as well. But what we started this year, my teachers know that everyone is tier 1. All teachers are tier 1. We all have to learn what structured literacy is. We've had training. We're anticipating that we're going to have more training as we go. My focus was vocabulary, critical reading, comprehension, the whole thing. What I found out was we couldn't move as fast as I wanted to, and that's okay, because I'd rather have quality. We got to vocabulary, and I'm seeing growth and gains and more of an awareness of incorporating vocabulary into the content areas. So we'll maybe take it a little bit slower, but we are moving, and I'm seeing growth. Tier 2, once again, training for our ELA staff. We are going to be looking into really good reading as a strategy to help with the multisyllabic decoding. What we found out with the kids at the high school level is when we sat down to do their oral reading out loud, the majority of them can decode most of the words. In other words, they read pretty flawlessly.
they just don't always comprehend what they read. They struggle sometimes with the multisyllabic words. So our focus is really trying to work on the long words, the multisyllabic, working with their comprehension. And FastBridge does have those two components to their progress monitoring, where you can not only check with their fluency, but you can also check with their comprehension. So we're working on that.
We found that FastBridge, a lot of their reading selections are 8th grade and lower. And our high school kids, they're able to read those. And so that really good reading focuses more on comprehension, which is what the English teachers are finding. That kind of needs to be our focus. So that, when she mentioned the really good reading, and I mentioned that we're getting some things for Tracy to help, and that those go hand in hand. That really good reading program is what we're looking at.
I've been going to the literacy cadre over at Greenbush, and the state cannot recommend anything for us, but they can hint quite a bit, and this does fall into that category, that it is very well for high school. It keeps their interest, because that is one deal, one struggle that you have at the high school level is working with kids with simple things as decoding words and things like that. So we're continuing to work on that, and we are, notice that we continue to build a living curriculum. Maybe you don't want to know what a living curriculum is, but that is that it is very specific to the student. One thing, we all took training last year, middle school and high school instructional coaches and some of our teachers, on how crucial it is, where the research is showing the evidence of interventions is not necessarily, you're not going to realize growth and gains if it's computerized, if you just set a student down to a computer and have them work. Those have their place, but the real growth comes from the living curriculum, and that's where you're constantly aware of where they're at and being specific to their needs and what is required to help them move and grow. So that is for our reading. We're going to continue doing what we're going to do, continue to build our resources. I might add that when Eric said that our ORF went up to 8th grade, I consulted with FastBridge, and they said continue to work in the system rather than trying to go find something else. So I went on their advice, and so we do the ORF at the 8th grade level with our kids, because that's what was recommended. And of course, that allows us to be able to use the data and their calculations. So at this point in time, that's what we're doing. Any questions on our reading at the high school? Okay. This is our math. This is A math. Once again, it's a two-part test, but this is the one that they ask for us to use. And once again, you can see that, somewhat consistent. We had a little bit of we did have drops in tier 2 and 3, and that's what you want to see, and growth in tier 1. And once again, the format of breaking it down a little bit more. And what's unusual at the high school, we have all these asterisks added, because it's not just a simple, what do we want to say, cookie cutter house or whatever. There's little.
It's not strictly grade level, especially in math.
It's not. And so there's lots of issues that come into play. But once again, you can see that we're going pretty good. We do not have any, what do we want to say, support classes, because we're starting that next year. But basically, at the 11th grade level, we've got students that are already in our LCC courses. By the 12th grade, we've got, where there's such a huge drop there, some of the kids have already fulfilled their 3-year math requirements, so they're not even in any of our math classes. But once again, the SMART goal is to focus on the tier 2 students, that we can begin to move them. And I will just share, we had Nancy, she's our teacher that just works wonders with our lower kids, and technology can frustrate anybody, but it was really frustrating her at the beginning of the year. It was just too much new, but we had a shift. She had a light bulb moment where all of a sudden she could see the value of Alex, which we purchased last year, and it's just like, I know exactly how I want to use this. And to me, it was exciting to see her excited, because you don't want to see teachers so frustrated at the point that they're ready to cry and go home. And it almost was with her, but she sees the value of it. And she said that, with restructuring our lower level math classes, that she's going to incorporate the Alex into the curriculum. She's going to be teaching, but it's going to be used more for remediation, because it can be assigned outside of the classroom, it is self-directed. It's a tool that can come in and help and aid with that. And I can see that as very crucial in our Tier 2 and Tier 3 math as we go forward. Questions? And I will tell you, just like on Tier 1 with STEM, since that's got a question mark behind it because that's still developing, because that will be our focus for next year, since we did not take it on this year. Okay, that's it.
You guys are doing so much.
They are.
That's a lot.
Can I just share with you something that I've been doing the Jim Knight. Jim Knight's an instructional guru, and he said something about data the other day. He said data's like a GPS system, okay? You know how you get your point A, point B, kind of tells you where you're at and where you need to go. He said there is a problem with data though. Sometimes it can be a very volatile issue because if a person believes that you're just blaming them for it's all your fault and you don't get very far. He's trying to teach us as instructional coaches how to do it. But he said, on the other hand, data keeps us on that journey. And he said, instructional coaches, anybody that has to deal with data, they keep hearing and recalculate. You hear that? How irritating that can be? But I think Lori kind of hit it. When the data comes out, we just kind of begin to absorb it and we begin to think, how are we going to recalculate?
That's exactly what they do.
So it can be tiring, but it is exciting at the same time. So I know you've heard a lot and we're done. So now you can just kind of relax and not worry about it anymore. So, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a recess now. We've been at this for 2 hours, and so let's take a recess for 5 minutes before we get into the rest of the agenda. So, recess 5 minutes, not executive session, just recess from open session for 5 minutes. Be back at 6:28.
Embarrassing. And if I saw that report, I probably wouldn't be sending my kid to Parsons.
I have to agree.
Okay, we're going to move on to 10.0, action to accept donations to schools.
Okay, that's on page 37 in your packet. So we'll look at Lincoln Elementary craft bags for students at a value of $25 from the public library. The public library made another donation of craft bags for $20 and a third one for $20. Grade school PTO donated conference meals for staff valued at $175 for a total of $240 at Lincoln in February. At Garfield, PTO made a restricted donation for parent-teacher meals, $150. That was the total there for that month. At Guthridge, PTO again restricted for conference meals, $150, and that was the total for that month. There were no donations at Parsons Middle School the month of February. The high school, New Life Clothing and More, made a donation to PHS Honor Flight, $300. Cans for Kansas Heroes, Warren W. Vincent, made an Honor Flight donation of $100. There were $668 worth of anonymous donations for Honor Flight. A Blossom for Every Occasion donated to the PHS Science Department flowers for lab dissection valued at $25. Ohio Pile Prints donated for Positive Reinforcement Program, $12.27. The Girls Golf Program got a donation from the Parsons Country Club Ladies Golf Association, valued at $216.86. And Roger Droney made a donation to the welding program for $200 for a total at the high school of $1,522.13 of donations in February. So the total school district donations for February, $2,062.13. I recommend that you approve those donations.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to accept those donations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.1, discussion and action on possible makeup day due to inclement weather.
Okay, so you should have that graph in front of you, again, the chart with the days, so that you'll know there's the requirement for the 1,116 hours for grades 1 through 11, and for 12th graders, the requirement is 1,086. We had 3 missed days before the last board meeting, and the board elected to make up one of those days. And then, of course, after that, we have another snow day. So we have missed 3 days altogether. And if you look to see, that's where the K-11 hours would be if we don't make up that day. And that's where it'd be for seniors, so there's plenty. The last makeup day that's available on the calendar is May the 20th, which is just the last day of school. It's adding another day at the end of the year, where students and then teachers would come back the following Monday.
No.
That doesn't work.
I make a motion, we waive that day lost, keep your calendar the way it is.
And maybe look at the next year's calendar to add another makeup day.
You got the calendar here.
I know it's coming. I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded to waive that makeup day. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. 10.2, action on the 22-23 student and athletic insurance renewal.
Okay, so the district carries 2 insurance policies that cover student accounts. The first policy has a cost of $25,686 per year. That covers all the school accidents for our enrolled students. So the cost, it's an increase of $1,223 for the entire year. So what that does is after students' primary insurance pays their portion, this insurance will pick up and pay up to 70% of the deductible costs. Okay? So it's used extensively by parents. I know, having had kids that have gone through the system, it seems like Matt Ray used it for injuries and things like that. So in addition, there is a catastrophic accident policy that we and it's based on enrollment, and that would pay additional funds to parents if there were catastrophic accident. The cost to that for the district is $621.90. It's the same as it was last year. It's a very reasonable safeguard.
What is the cutoff on the catastrophic? Where does it kick in at? Is that from $10,000 to $25,000?
I don't know. Tanya's sitting out there. She might know off the top of her head. I'd have to go back and look. Is that typically what it is?
Because the Activity Association comes in at $25,000.
Right. So anything. But then that gives, it just covers that spot in between what a parents might pay and what Keisha would pay,
It's normally that 10,000, 25,000.
somewhere in there. I'm not sure right off the top of my head, but
Tanya, do you
sounds
know?
about right.
I believe that is correct, I can double check.
Yeah. It's just the spot between what a parent would pay and what Keisha would pay.
And,
I think it's
and the catastrophic, there's also an excess cost beyond that if they were, if the student were
$39.
there was an additional liability for accident. I can give it to you.
I'm sure it's 10, I'm sure it's 10 to 25.
10 to 25.
But it is, I can give it.
It does say up here,
I think it says that at the top of page 39.
catastrophic coverage, 25,000 to 1 million.
39, page 39.
Page 39 at the top of page.
It does. 25,000 to $1 million. Higher limit.
So we're paying double, twice then.
Well, if we're paying for Keisha, but Keisha only pays, I mean, the total cost of that is $621.90. So it isn't.
So it's not big.
So it's not a big fee. I would recommend that you renew both of those.
I'll make
But
a
then maybe
motion.
next year have
Oh, excuse me.
them reassign the value at the higher end after the Keisha.
We could look to see if they could do that for the fee of $621.
Motion to accept the student athletic accident insurance renewal.
Moved and seconded to approve that student athletic accident renewal. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.3,
Okay.
academic calendar.
So this is the calendar. It's on page 40 in your packet. If you want to go back there and look. It starts with students would begin on August the 18th and end on May the 18th. It would include the 168 days for students and 177.5 days for teachers, because they do have 9.5 days of professional development and a work day. The calendar also has 4 early dismissals at noon at the end of each quarter, so that teachers can work on their grades in the afternoon as per the negotiated agreement. The members of the calendar committee, Olivia Joy, Melissa Peak, Wendy Vaughn, Kelly Bedore, Kurt Freeze, Mary Freeze, Paul Deroni, Rob Barkus, Tyler Gordon, and Joanne Thompson. We all were able to meet one time, had 3 different samples of calendars with possibilities. They took them back and got some feedback. And we offered another, and this was the calendar that the majority of the staff approved and wanted to have. It's very similar to this year's calendar. And you'll notice that there are 3 makeup days built into this calendar as well. The trouble is, we just can't control when the bad weather's going to hit, and if it's after the makeup days, those kinds of things.
Yeah, but the May 19th, the last day of schools, we can control that.
Well, sure.
We did that on Good Friday last year, or this year, I can't remember. That would be my only suggestion.
So your suggestion is to make Good Friday a day that's a make-up day? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
So, and that would be
The 10th. No, it's April 7th.
17th?
So it'd be April the 7th instead of April the 10th.
No, he's saying in addition to the 10th.
In addition to the 10th.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
one
and
and
so
another.
we do have that as one of the holidays for those employees that are 12-month employees, so that would have to be changed.
So you're saying we go Good Friday? So
He's saying that the board would have the discretion to go Good
To use
Friday.
that day.
To add that as a
That's what he's
makeup day
saying.
to the calendar.
So we have 4 makeup days.
So we have 4 possibles.
Right.
Correct. Whether we chose that one or not would be
Exactly.
another thing, but we have 4 possibles.
we wouldn't have to.
No.
That's probably a good idea because of the conundrum we got in this year. I don't know.
Right.
Well, I think that's a friendly amendment to the calendar.
We
Yeah.
can add that. And because we do go over, with the 168 student days, we're going to go way over the required hours.
Is it still the 116 or 1,116
Right,
hours required?
That's for first grade through 11th grade, and then seniors are required to have 1,086.
And 168 days translates to how many hours?
So for our K-11 students, the 168 days is 1,173 at 1.3 hours.
Okay.
And the same right across there for 1,135.
Okay, so we've got a friendly amendment by adding April 7th as a possible makeup day to this calendar. Is that a motion, Lou?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's a motion to adopt the calendar with that amendment. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Okay, moved and seconded to adopt the calendar with that one amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.4, discussion and action on digital manufacturing technology lab.
Okay, so that's included in your view on pages 41 through 43. There's also in the view on March the 11th, we have that visit and that tour this evening of Mr. Ray's classroom. And so,
And it was mentioned by him that he'd like to get started as soon as school's out.
as soon as possible, because it will take a while in order for the digital lab, because it would be a digital manufacturing tech lab, in order for that to be ready by August, the sooner the better.
Well, it's a pretty much one-of-a-kind program, and it's pretty popular, and it's something that our kids need, so I would make a motion to adopt this.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve, for us to approve proceeding forward with the Digital Manufacturing Technology Lab and the associated funds for that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.5, discussion and possible action on the soccer memorandum of understanding.
Okay, so included in your view on the 11th was a draft of that, and since that time, I have met with Gary from the rec. He was going to try to be here this evening, but his wife worked, and so bringing 4 little kids, he thought wasn't going to make it to the board meeting. So he and I did visit last week. He did bring an updated MOU that was sent out last week, and it did have some changes in it. If you noticed, numbers 5, 6, 7, and 8 had been in addition to that. The basic gist of all of this is that he's looking to hire an employee and have it be a 50-50 split. It'd be a 40-hour work week, taking care of the fields, those kinds of things. The cost for that, Tanya went through and figured that with the hourly wage and the health benefits, Social Security, Medicare, all of those things, half of that cost would be right about $24,000. And so we would employ the person, and then the rec center would pay us, versus the rec center employing them and we, trying to go about that.
What about the cost of utilities?
That's that is a new addition to this. All parties agree that we would pay the costs and 1/2 of the maintenance incurred. That was something new that was added to this MOU, and I said, I'm not sure what the costs would be, the watering, I would assume. And it was my understanding that the city had agreed to do some of that initially, and maybe they ran the water to the site instead, but weren't interested in covering those utilities.
Yeah, my recollection was they would help with the installation, but past that, they
Right.
couldn't. I think there was something, a legal obligation to where they couldn't even.
That the city couldn't, and so
Pay
the
for
rec
it.
center would. And so now what Mr. Chrisman is asking is that we would pay for those utility costs, 503 would, and half of the maintenance costs, which half of the maintenance costs had always been a part of it. The insurance obligation, Tanya can visit about that. We double checked. Since it is the 503 property, we're not sure that the rec center would need to maintain general liability insurance. We already have that, so.
As the owner.
Mhm.
No, as the owner of the property, we would be primary insurance, because that's where people would know, but also when the rec center is using the field, there would need to be some sort of agreement where they would be directly responsible for whatever they would be using it. And we can further discuss that.
Yeah, I think maybe we better flush this out a little bit more. I don't think,
So I,
yeah, the insurance is a little bit concerning to me.
to me also, because it was a new ad, and I just wanted to gauge interest in willingness to pay the utilities.
Yeah, I just don't even know what, I would even have an estimate.
There's no lights, right?
Not yet.
There will have to be lights.
There'll have to be lights, though.
There will be.
That's, I think,
Spring
eventually.
soccer. Yeah, fall and spring soccer.
Yeah.
Fall.
I think eventually there will be lights. So that's where I'm hesitant to say we're willing to incur all those costs. We're not sure. And Gary wasn't sure yet what those costs would be. I don't feel comfortable obligating the board to pay those costs when we don't know what they will be in the future. But
And are there not plans eventually to have concession stand out there?
eventually, that's what he had talked about doing that as well. So then you're going to have the power and all of those things. So, would you like for him to come and visit at a board meeting? This has been a long process. And he really wants to work together, and I'm sure we can figure out a way to make it work.
Basically, on use of the soccer fields, the rec center will be using it, do you think, quite a bit more than the high school?
It's just going to depend on the season and the weather. So, but we would work very closely with the rec center to do the scheduling.
And now Caleb Reed, who's the soccer coach at the high school, is starting a program with the youth through PRC that he's leading, group-led practices once a week he just started it during this soccer season. So that would be, he's hoping to bring all of his high school crew to help with instruction. So it would be a good connector.
I think the fields are going to be used quite a bit. I'm excited to have them. It's just a matter now of working out the details of who's going to pay for what in the future. So if Gary were to give us an estimate on those utilities.
Right, and what they are, what exactly.
And also stages, because stage one might look a lot different than when you have concession stands up, and what that would cost for plumbing and water and electricity and all of those potentials.
Well, we don't know. What 5 to 10 years is going to bring us in terms of our usage versus the rec center's usage. The rec center generates fees for a number of their programs. We don't generate fees. We spend money and they bring money in, and then we levy a tax to pay them.
That's correct.
So my personal opinion would be, is there no sunset clause on this?
Well, that was another thing. That was not something that he had included in
We may
this
want to
particular
consider a
MOU.
fixed term agreement that a future board can then discuss, given the uncertainty. Because we'll bind a board forever with this thing. That's not my intent. So I think we better revisit this. I don't know that we need Mr. Chrisman here to, I don't know. I'm just.
I don't know either. And he didn't have the answers to these questions when I had asked him about an estimate for
And you
utilities.
can find that out without him having to come.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I think.
The insurance.
Yeah. The insurance is critical to me, but more importantly than anything is probably a term.
Right.
So that it can be renegotiated as things change.
Right. And so this is he brought us this last Thursday.
Yeah.
When he met with us, so.
All right. Let's table
So we
that
can
until
table
future
that.
time. Yeah. 10.6, action on membership in the Kansas Association of School Boards.
All right, this is on page 48. of your packet. KSB provides a wide range of services to boards of education across the state. As you know that, the dues for 22-23 are $12,853.15. I would recommend that you approve that expenditure.
So moved.
Does that include the season pass?
Yes, it does. It does include the season pass.
For who? Oh, all right. All of us. Definitely.
The season pass allows us to go to all these activities at no extra cost.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
Paying the fee. Yep. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to approve that membership in the Casby for next year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.7, action on the Casby Legal Assistance Fund.
all right, so the Legal Assistant Fund provides a wide range of legal services to boards across the state. The contract renewal for the period from July 1 of 22 to June the 30th of 23 is $2,300. Absolutely recommend that you approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve that School Board Legal Assistance Fund contract for next year. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.8, executive session.
I have 3 things.
We have to do the addendum.
Oh,
Oh, apologize, the
All right, sorry
addendum's not
about
yet.
that.
10.7A.
10.7A.
Okay.
Okay, and this is about that statewide mill levy, or LOB. Okay.
Yes, the supplemental general/local option budget. It just gives us the right, but not the obligation, to levy more taxes in that fund.
So we've always done 31%.
We've always done the statewide average, which is currently 31%, and it was 30 when I got here, and since 44% have done 33, it might be 32, but I'm going to keep myself from just going off into that world and putting you all to sleep, unless you would like to know.
So we have authority to increase to 33%, and that would generate about $200,000 more each year. It would give us the authority to do that. It wouldn't mean that we would have to do that.
Yes.
We publish a resolution, correct? And then
Right, yes.
is it 20 days for a petition to?
20.
It's subject to a protest petition.
Is it 20 days?
And of 10%. It's the same thing that we did with the capital
There's
outlay.
a time frame.
Right.
I think it's 20 days that they have to file a petition.
The sufficient is not filed.
I don't know how many days it is, but it is something that we have to publish, and then there's so many days that they have to protest it, then it would be counted.
If a sufficient petition is not filed, when we adopt the local option budget. I don't see the days number in here on this particular thing.
But it is similar to when we publish, and then the public has this many days to have it.
Within
So-
40 days.
40 days.
40 days. After the publication of this resolution. There it
So
is.
this would be a 2% authority.
Yes, it would.
2% authority, we don't have to use it.
Yep.
If we were ever in a dire situation where we needed to levy tax in both funds, we could do that as well. Just give us the opportunity to have more money if we need it, more flexibility if we need that as well.
Any further discussion? Okay, need a motion, folks?
So moved.
And a second.
Moved and seconded to adopt that resolution to increase our LOB percentage from the statewide average to 33%.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Now we're ready for executive session.
10.8, so what are you thinking?
I would say
for-
15 minutes.
Okay. Do our board members have anything they want to discuss?
After me.
Okay. So do you need a motion then to enter executive session?
So moved.
I move we go into executive session at 6:53.
6 o'clock. Sorry.
Oh my gosh, it's 7:53. That clock is wrong,
That
sorry.
is wrong. We need to
Come
get
on,
that changed.
rookie.
I'm back in 15 minutes at 8:08.
Second.
Okay, we're going to executive session. It's been moved and seconded to go into executive session to discuss confidential employee information pursuant to the non-elected personnel accession in Tacoma and exception for employer obligations in Tacoma at 7:53 for 15 minutes. We return back here 8:08 in this room. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we are recessed to executive session for 15 minutes.
need to update the clock. I even knew it was wrong, and I still
I can't do any of
All right, we're back in open session. We're moving to 10.9, motion to approve the negotiations letter with PNEA.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the negotiations letter as discussed with PNEA. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.10, action to extend the contract of building administrator for 22-23 school year.
Shelley Gardner, Lincoln Elementary. I recommend you approve that extension.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to extend the contract of Mrs. Gardner for 22-23 school year. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. 10.11, action on personnel.
Okay, a couple recommendations for employment. Joe Campmeyer, Middle School CTE Communications, effective the 22-23 school year, and Sally Clay, High School Assistant Track Coach, effective the 21-22 season. I recommend that you approve those for employment.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to approve those recommendations for employment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
We have one resignation from employment. Brianna Hancock, 6th grade social studies teacher, effective the end of the 21-22 school year. Recommend you approve that.
So moved again.
Moved and seconded to approve that resignation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we have one termination from employment. Evan Connor, bus monitor, effective today, March the, what is today?
21st.
21st, my goodness. I
So
recommend you.
moved.
Second. Okay. Moved and seconded to approve that termination from employment. Mr. Connor, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
We have one resignation for retirement. James Ramsey, maintenance director, effective May the 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Moved and seconded to approve that resignation for retirement reluctantly. All those in favor say aye. 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 Motion carries. Nothing further. We are adjourned. Thank you for your attendance tonight.